Welcome back to the deep dive. We sift through stacks of sources, pull out the key insights, and basically get you up to speed fast. Today, we're tackling something huge from the management world, a concept that promised, well, everything. Business Process Reengineering, BPR.
That's right. It really hit the scene with this incredible promise of quantum leaps in performance. You can see the appeal, right? I mean, what company wouldn't want dramatic improvements? Cost, quality, service, speed. BPR claimed it could revolutionize all of it.
Exactly. So at its core, what is BPR? It's about looking really systematically at how work gets done, analyzing those processes, and then fundamentally improving them.
Yeah, but it's more than just improvement. It's not about, small tweaks here and there. It's about finding those processes that are redundant, slow, just plain inefficient.
The ones that have always been done that way.
Precisely. And then implementing entirely new ways of doing things, best practices, or sometimes even inventing completely new approaches. It was a real shift from, let's say, doing things a bit better to doing completely better things.
And that's where the really radical idea came in, the one from Michael Hammer and James Champy. They weren't just talking about improving things.
Oh, no. Their whole argument, the core of their big book, Reengineering the Corporation, was that companies needed to fundamentally rethink and radically redesign their core processes, not just fix them.
They used the word obliterate, didn't they?
They did. Obliterate existing inefficient processes. Start from a clean slate. That was the mantra. It was like, forget gradual change. Let's just tear it down and rebuild it right. Think demolition, not renovation.
Obliterate, wow. That really captures the disruptive spirit of it. Total break from the past. And the idea was it could apply anywhere, right? Customer service, manufacturing, finance.
Absolutely anywhere. Order fulfillment, accounting, product development. If it was a process, BPR claimed it could be re-engineered for massive gains. It was positioned as this universal key to unlocking incredible performance.
So for this deep dive, that's our mission. We're going to dig into where BPR came from, unpack those core principles Hammer and Champy laid out. We'll definitely look at the big successes, those almost legendary case studies.
The ones that made it famous, yeah.
But then, crucially, we need to get into the challenges, the controversies, the dark side that led to this huge backlash later on.
Right. Why it went from being hailed as this corporate savior to being called a heartless fad by so many.
And ultimately, what can we actually learn from its really complex and, frankly, still pretty relevant legacy today?
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. The foundational philosophy. Hammer and Champy's principles. These weren't just steps, were they? They were really a new way of thinking.
Exactly. They laid out 7 core principles, and each one was kind of designed to challenge how businesses were traditionally run, the hierarchies, the silos between departments.
That's it. They were the intellectual framework, the why behind the potential for such dramatic change.
All right, let's walk through them. Principle number 1, focus on results instead of tasks. That sounds simple, almost obvious maybe.
Yeah.
But what did it really mean back then?
It sounds simple, but it was a huge shift. Traditionally, companies break work down into little tasks. Managers focus on, did you complete your task, how quickly? But Hammer and Champy said, no, focus on the outcome, the end result. What value are you actually delivering to the customer?
So instead of just managing the steps,
you organize the entire process around the goal. You ask, what's the ultimate point here? Not, how do we do this specific step in accounting? It meant looking end to end, often crossing departmental lines to deliver that final value. It's about the what and why, not just the how of individual pieces.
That makes sense. Thinking about the whole journey, not just the pit stops. Okay, principle 2. Allow individuals already involved to become part of the process. Sounds like empowerment.
It is empowerment, but maybe deeper than we usually think. It's about letting the people who actually do the work, or even the people who benefit from the process, like customers, have a real hand in designing and executing it.
So not just top-down design.
Right. The old way was, experts design it, workers do it. BPR argued the frontline folks often know best where the problems are, where the improvements could be made. A modern example, think about online self-service tools.
Like tracking your own package or managing your account online.
Exactly. The customer is directly involved in executing part of the process because it benefits them. It's about giving control and input to those closest to the action or the outcome. You know it best, help us build it better.
Got it. Then number 3, combine data collection with processing work. This feels very data-driven.
It was pretty ahead of its time, yeah. The idea is simple. Cut down errors and delays by having the person or system doing the work also capture the information needed for it.
Instead of passing data from person to person.
Precisely. Think about taking a customer order. Instead of one person writing it down, another typing it in, a third verifying it,
Yeah.
you combine those steps, often using IT, right? The person taking the order inputs it directly into the system that processes it.
Fewer handoffs, fewer chances for mistakes.
Exactly. Data is created and used at the same point. Reduces redundancy, improves accuracy. It's fundamental for automation.
Makes sense. Number 4, share resources between usually disparate departments. This sounds like a direct attack on silos.
It absolutely is. It's all about interconnectivity. Stop hoarding resources, information, people, equipment within departmental walls.
So share the knowledge, share the tools.
Yeah, create a more centralized or at least interconnected operation where resources flow to where they're needed most. It challenges that my department, my budget, my data mentality. It's about the company's resources used for the overall good. Better collaboration, better productivity.
Okay, number 5 is a bit more complex. Join parallel processes instead of linking their end results. Can you break that down?
Right, this one's key for efficiency, especially in complex projects. Imagine building a house. You've got electricians and plumbers working at the same time, in parallel.
Okay.
The old way might be they both finish their separate work, and then they try to connect everything at the end. Okay, where does my wire connect to your pipe?
And then they find out the pipe is where the wire needs to go.
Exactly. Chaos, rework, delays. This principle says, no, you coordinate those parallel processes as they happen, continuously communicate during each step.
So the electrician and plumber talk while they're working.
Effectively, yes. Or the system ensures coordination. You identify conflicts early when they're easy and cheap to fix, not after the walls are up. It prevents costly rework and keeps things moving smoothly. It's about synchronization throughout, not just integration in the end.
Catching problems early. Smart. Okay, number 6, integrate decision-making throughout the steps of each process. Sounds like cutting out middle management.
Well, it certainly challenged traditional hierarchy. One of the biggest slowdowns in old processes was waiting for approvals. Your work sits on a supervisor's desk, then their manager's desk.
Endless sign-offs.
Right. This principle says push decision-making down. Let the person actually doing the work make the decisions related to that work, within certain boundaries, of course.
Empowering the front line.
Exactly. Or using technology like automated decision rules for routine stuff. It dramatically speeds things up by cutting out those approval delays.
And that's fascinating, right? Because it flattens the organization. It gives people more ownership, more accountability.
Absolutely. It shifts from control to trust and empowerment. People feel more connected to the outcome when they have a say in how it happens. Big cultural shift.
Definitely. And the last one, number 7, accurate data collection should be captured once and directly from the source. Feels related to number 3, the data collection one.
It is, but it emphasizes the source and accuracy. The core idea is data integrity and efficiency. Every time data gets rekeyed or copied from one system to another, you risk errors and waste time.
So get it right the first time from the original source.
Precisely. Capture it once, directly where it originates. Think scanning a barcode instead of typing a number. This eliminates redundant entries, reduces manual effort, ensures everyone is working with the same accurate, up-to-date information. It's foundational for reliable processes and good decision-making.
Okay, so those are the 7 principles. Pretty radical thinking for the time. And they weren't just theories, right? They actually led to some incredible results.
Oh, absolutely. The case studies are what really propelled BPR into the stratosphere. They showed these weren't just abstract ideas, they could deliver those quantum leaps.
Let's dive into those. The classic example everyone mentions is Ford Motor Company's accounts payable. What was going on there before BPR?
It was a nightmare, frankly. Ford had this enormous accounts payable department, over 500 people. Picture rows and rows of desks, piles of paper. Their job was basically just processing supplier invoices.
500 people just for paying bills.
Essentially, yes. And the process was incredibly clunky. It was this 3-way match. An invoice arrives from a supplier. Someone has to find the original purchase order from Ford's purchasing team. Someone else has to find the receiving document from the factory dock, proving the parts actually arrived. Then they try to match all 3 pieces of paper.
Sounds incredibly slow and error-prone.
It was. Lots of discrepancies, delays in paying suppliers, huge administrative costs, just a massive bottleneck.
And the wake-up call came when they looked at Mazda.
That was the aha moment.
Yeah.
They did some benchmarking and discovered Mazda, which Ford partly owned at the time, was handling its entire accounts payable with just a tiny handful of clerks. Like 5 people.
5 versus over 500.
Yeah. It was a shock. It made Ford realize their own process wasn't just a little inefficient, it was fundamentally broken. Why did they need hundreds of people to do what Mazda did with almost none?
So how did they re-engineer it? How did they ditch the paper matching?
They moved to what they called an invoiceless process. It was genius, really. Step 1. Purchasing issues a purchase order. It goes into a shared database. Everyone can see it.
Okay.
Step 2. The parts arrive at the factory dock. The receiving clerk doesn't wait for an invoice. They just check the database. Do we have a purchase order for this? If yes, they accept the shipment and log its receipt in the database.
And that's the key part.
That's the magic trigger. The act of logging the receipt automatically schedules the payment to the supplier according to the terms on the original purchase order. No invoice needed. Accounts payable basically vanished as a processing center. They only got involved if there was an exception, a problem.
Wow, so the results must have been huge.
Staggering. A 75% reduction in headcount in accounts payable. 75%. Payments were faster, more accurate. Supplier relationships improved. It became the textbook BPR success story.
Incredible. Okay, another big one. IBM Credit Corporation. Approving financing for big computer deals. What was the issue there? IBM, you'd think they'd be efficient?
You would, but it shows how processes can get fragmented even in tech companies. Getting a financing quote took, on average, 6 days. 6 days for a customer wanting to know if they could finance a multi-million-dollar mainframe.
6 days. What took so long?
That's what 2 IBM managers investigated. They found the actual work involved checking credit, working out pricing, reviewing legal terms, took about 90 minutes total. 90 minutes of work spread over 6 days.
So where did the rest of the time go?
Handoffs. Waiting. The request went from a credit specialist to their inbox, then to a pricing specialist, sat in their inbox, then to legal. Each step added delay. The file spent most of its time just sitting on desks waiting for the next person.
Classic silo problem again.
Yeah.
So how did IBM re-engineer that?
They blew up the specialist assembly line. They created a new role, the deal structure. This was a generalist, one person responsible for the entire process, start to finish.
One person handles the whole quote.
For most cases, yes. They were supported by a new expert system, sophisticated software that gave them the rules, data, pricing models they needed. They became the single point of contact. Specialists were still there for really tricky, unusual deals, but the deal structure handled the bulk.
And the impact? Fewer handoffs must mean faster turnaround.
Faster is an understatement. Turnaround time dropped from 6 days to just 4 hours.
Days to hours.
Yeah, and get this. Their productivity increased 100-fold. They could handle 100 times the volume of deals with only a small increase in staff. Customer satisfaction soared. It was another quantum leap example, eliminating handoffs, empowering a single point of contact, using IT smartly.
Those are really dramatic. Let's look at Taco Bell. This wasn't just one department, was it? They rethought the whole restaurant.
That's what's so interesting here. Taco Bell in the 80s was kind of struggling. Slow growth, high overhead costs. A big chunk of any fast food restaurant's cost and space is the kitchen, right?
Yeah.
Storing food, prepping it, cooking it.
Sure, the kitchen's the heart of the operation.
Right, but it's expensive space. Plus, their restaurant managers were bogged down in paperwork, inventory, scheduling, reports, not focusing on customers or managing their teams.
So what was their radical redesign? How do you shrink the kitchen?
They basically took the kitchen out of the restaurant, or most of it. They centralized food prep into regional commissaries. So the beef, the beans, the lettuce, tomatoes, all prepped, cooked, chopped, packaged centrally.
And just shipped to the restaurants ready to assemble.
Exactly. This massively reduced the kitchen size needed in each restaurant. Suddenly you had way more space for customer seating, more revenue potential. And they brought in this system called TACO, Total Automation of Company Operations.
Taco, nice.
Yeah, it handled inventory, scheduling, gave managers real-time sales data. It freed them up from the back office.
So managers could actually manage, focus on service.
Precisely. The results were huge. Smaller restaurant footprints, more seats, better, more consistent food quality because of the central prep. Managers were empowered. Taco Bell saw significant growth in revenue and profit. They fundamentally changed the fast food model.
Amazing. Okay, one more quick one. Hallmark. Greeting cards seem simple, but they had a process problem too.
Yeah, even creative industries aren't immune. Hallmark's issue was time to market. It took them over 2 years to get a new card design from an idea into stores.
2 years for a greeting card. Why so long?
Sequential handoffs again. Artists design something, sends it to a writer, writer sends it to marketing, marketing sends it to production. Each step done in isolation, waiting for the previous one. By the time a card hit the shelves, the trend it was based on might be long gone.
Designing for the past, essentially. What was the fix?
They broke down the silos. They created cross-functional teams, artists, writers, marketers, all working together on a card line from the very beginning, brainstorming together, solving problems together.
Collaboration from day one.
Exactly. And they implemented systems for real-time sales data. So the teams knew instantly what was selling, what wasn't, and could adjust designs quickly. Critically, these teams were empowered to make decisions without endless layers of management approval.
Fewer bottlenecks, faster decisions.
Right. It slashed their time to market dramatically, made them much more responsive to trends, more competitive. Another win for breaking down walls and empowering teams.
Okay, so these successes, Ford, IBM, Taco Bell, Hallmark, they sound almost too good to be true, which leads us to the next part of this story. Because here's where it gets, as you said, really interesting. BPR didn't stay the golden child for long.
No, it definitely didn't. Despite these incredible high-profile wins, BPR quickly developed a really controversial reputation. So much so that Hammer and Champy themselves and other key figures like Thomas Davenport ended up publicly apologizing.
Apologies from the guys who wrote the manifesto. That's
Right.
unusual in the management guru world.
Highly unusual. This was around 1995, just a few years after the book exploded and BPR was everywhere. They basically issued a collective mea culpa.
Why? What prompted such a public reversal? What went wrong?
The core admission was brutally honest. They had forgotten about people. Hammer himself said he was focused on the process like an engineer and didn't think enough about the human impact. Davenport expressed real shock that his ideas, aimed at making companies better, led to so much job loss.
Ah, so the obliterate and clean slate approach often meant obliterating jobs.
That's exactly how it played out in many, many companies. BPR became almost synonymous with downsizing, especially targeting middle management, whose roles often involved coordinating those inefficient, fragmented processes that reengineering aimed to eliminate.
Hammer became a symbol for layoffs then.
Unwillingly, yes. He hated it, apparently. But reengineering unleashed this massive wave of restructuring, and it triggered, as one writer put it, a ferocious middle management backlash. Suddenly, BPR wasn't seen as innovation. It was seen as a justification for ruthless cost-cutting.
And this fueled the whole industry, didn't it? The consultants.
Oh, hugely. A multi-billion-dollar consulting industry sprang up, often with a very clear mandate from CEOs. Come in, re-engineer us, cut the fat. And fat very often meant payroll expenses. Some consultants did it thoughtfully, but many applied it like a blunt instrument.
Cut first, ask questions later. And were the results always good, even from a purely business perspective? I heard failure rates were high.
Alarmingly high. Studies back in the early to mid-90s consistently showed failure rates of 70% or even higher. 70%.
So most BPR projects actually made things worse.
According to those studies, yes. Instead of quantum leap, they often resulted in chaos. More confusion, new delays, deep employee resentment, costly screw-ups. The cure was often worse than the disease. Morale plummeted.
Why such a high failure rate? Was there something fundamentally flawed in the approach itself? You mentioned Hammer's background, this hacker mentality.
That's a really insightful critique that emerged. Hammer came from MIT's computer science world, that hacker culture which, valued elegance, efficiency, tearing down bureaucracy, finding the clever one-line solution. Great for code.
But maybe not so great for complex human organizations.
Exactly. That mindset prizes ripping out inefficient code and rewriting it perfectly from scratch. It led Hammer to this very rigid all-or-nothing stance on BPR.
What do you mean all or nothing?
He explicitly said, reengineering can't be carried out in small and cautious steps. It is an all-or-nothing proposition. There was no room for incremental change, no piloting, no adjusting as you go.
So no debugging, you just flipped a switch on the whole new system.
Pretty much. Which, as anyone who's lived through a major system change knows, is terrifying. People described working in re-engineered companies as feeling like living inside a piece of buggy, frustrating software with no way to shut off the machine. Errors happened, resistance occurred, but the all-or-nothing philosophy often meant those were ignored or blamed on the people, not the flawed design or rollout.
That sounds incredibly stressful and counterproductive. A high-stakes gamble with no safety net.
It really was. And critics pointed out that BPR often relied too heavily on just benchmarking, copying best practices from others, without a deep theoretical understanding of why things worked or why they might fail in a different context. It was more about mimicking success than truly understanding organizational dynamics and, crucially, the human element.
So this gap between the radical theory and the messy reality, that's where things really fell apart often. To understand that better, we need to look at a case where a company tried BPR but documented the experience really well, right? Pacific Bell's Centrex project.
Yes, this is a fantastic case study because it wasn't presented as a failure, parts of it were seen as a success, but it really highlights the tension between the grand BPR vision and what actually happens during implementation in a large, complex, existing organization.
Okay, so Pacific Bell wanted to fix their Centrex process. What was Centrex again, and what was the problem?
Centrex was a big business phone service offering from telcos back then. Think complex phone systems for large companies managed by PacBell. But ordering and setting it up was slow, 5 to 15 days costly, and full of errors. Customers hated it, employees hated it. Management felt just tweaking it wasn't enough. They wanted radical change. A Band-Aid approach, they called it, wouldn't cut it.
So they bought into the BPR promise. Let's compare the core BPR assumptions, the theory, with what PacBell actually experienced. Assumption 1. Reengineering results in radical change. Quantum leaps.
Okay, so the design they came up with for Centrex was radical. They looked outside the industry, reimagined the whole thing, but the actual implementation, it turned out to be much more incremental.
Incremental, but they got results.
Oh yeah, definitely improvements. Cost reductions between 36–50%. Error reductions maybe 20–50%. Customer satisfaction was high, 90–97%. Good numbers, but they were often more modest than planned. Not quite the earth-shattering leaps promised by the theory. Interestingly, the managers on the ground often did see these changes as radical for their world, which just shows that gap in perspective. Radical design, but pragmatic step-by-step rollout.
So managing expectations is key, okay? Assumption 2. Reengineering assumes clean slate change, obliterate and start fresh.
Again, the design team absolutely embraced the clean slate. They deliberately included people who knew nothing about Centrex to get fresh ideas. They benchmarked insurance companies. They designed an ideal process.
The reality bites.
Reality bites hard. When it came to implementation, they ran straight into PacBell's existing reality. Decades-old organizational structures. 10 or 12 different legacy IT systems that barely spoke to each other. Local managers worried about disruption, union contracts. You can't just wish those away.
So the clean slate design hit the existing messy state.
Exactly. The initial pilot had to be scaled back because the fancy IT systems weren't ready. They literally had to put people physically in the same room, co-location, because the assumed collaboration technology wasn't there yet. The big lesson. One can design assuming a clean slate, but one must implement assuming an existing state. You build on what you have.
Makes total sense. You can't just ignore the foundations. All right, assumption 3. Reengineering focuses on end-to-end processes. Look at the whole thing, start to finish.
And the Centrex design was beautifully end-to-end. It envisioned this case manager role, one person handling most of an order, holistic thinking. But in implementation, what often happens?
People go for the quick wins, the low-hanging fruit.
You got it. Rather than tackling the entire complex redesign process at once, managers often focused on fixing the parts that seemed most broken or offered the biggest bang for the buck with the least resistance. This meant different regions implemented different pieces or only partial versions of the grand design. The full integrated vision sometimes got lost in the pursuit of immediate, localized improvements.
Practical? Maybe, but it dilutes the overall impact. Okay, assumption 4. Reengineering is top-down directed. Senior management has to drive it.
The initial Centrex design absolutely was top-down. Big executive sponsorship, high visibility. But what PacBell found, crucially, was that implementation needed bottom-up ownership to really stick.
The executives lost interest over time.
Well, their attention inevitably moved on as the project dragged into execution. What really determined if Centrex reengineering got adopted in a particular region wasn't a corporate mandate, but whether the local regional managers bought in. Did they see it as solving their problems? Did they champion it? Adoption was patchy, driven by local motivations, not a consistent top-down push.
So top-down vision needs bottom-up commitment to actually happen. Fascinating. Last one, reengineering is information technology enabled. IT is the great enabler.
And the Centrex design definitely banked heavily on advanced IT. Groupware for collaboration, a single view of the customer across all those legacy systems, intelligent tools. It was all baked into the vision.
But the IT wasn't ready.
Much of it wasn't, not initially. Integrating with 10 or 12 old systems, building sophisticated new front ends, that takes huge amounts of time and money. So they often started implementing the new process without the enabling IT. And here's the kicker.
What happened?
The initial trial showed that something like 80% of the productivity gains came not from new tech, but simply from creating those co-located teams, putting people together, improving communication and workflow manually. IT was important long-term, but the human process changes delivered most of the early wins.
Wow. So process and people first, tech enables later, perhaps?
In that case, yes. It showed you could get significant benefits just by redesigning the work and how people interacted, even before the full tech vision was realized.
So what does the Pacific Bell story really tell us then? It was a success, but a qualified one.
It tells us that radical designs almost always translate into incremental implementations in the real world. That's the big takeaway. You might aim for the moon, but you get there in stages, navigating existing constraints.
So companies need to manage expectations better. Except that change might be slower, the results may be more modest than the hype.
Exactly. And understand the critical importance of bottom-up buy-in. You need the people doing the work to own the change. And be realistic about IT. It's often an enabler, but maybe not the magic bullet, and it takes time. Pac-Bell showed you need someone, maybe a keeper of the original vision, to keep pushing for that tech enablement over the long haul to get the full benefit.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, this deep dive into BPR, it's been quite a journey. We saw this powerful idea, promising revolution, delivering sometimes incredible results like at Ford or IBM.
Truly transformative wins in some cases, absolutely. It proved radical change was possible.
But we also saw the dark side. The rigid all-or-nothing approach, the focus on process, sometimes completely ignoring the people involved, leading to mass layoffs and high failure rates. The apologies from its creators.
Yeah, the human cost was significant, and the backlash was real. It forced a painful realization about the complexities of organizational change.
So the understanding evolved, right? BPR taught us to think about processes, not just tasks, and about empowerment, not just hierarchy.
Definitely shifted the conversation. But the practical experience, like Pac-Bell, showed implementation needs that balance. Radical vision, yes, but incremental, adaptive, people-focused execution within the messy reality of existing constraints.
And those core challenges BPR faced, getting management support, having clear goals involving employees, finding resources, managing the technology, realistically, they're still the same challenges companies face today with digital transformation, agile rollouts, any big change, aren't they?
Absolutely spot on. The fundamental lessons about not forgetting about people, about the need to adapt and iterate, debug the process, about managing the human side of change, they are timeless. They apply to whatever the current buzzword is.
Which leads to our final provocative thought for you, the listener. As you look at today's business landscape, with all the talk of AI transformation, disruption, agile everything, how many of these new revolutionary strategies might just be echoing the BPR story? Are we, as businesses, as leaders, as individuals, truly learning from the past? Are we remembering the people, the need for adaptation, the messy reality? Or are we sometimes still seduced by that all-or-nothing, clean slate promise, forgetting that sustainable change is often built step by step, with empathy and a willingness to learn as we go? Something to think about.